Today, we're talking with Lisa Thomson, who is the Director of Career Services at Quantic School of Business and Technology. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Jenny. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so many things to talk about. As a starting point, we talk a lot about careers and career journeys in this channel and at Think Development. So I'd love for you to just start by telling me a little bit about your path to career coaching. I know it was a little bit of an untraditional one.
I would say I've always viewed myself as an educator of some kind. I come from a history of educators in my family and always really valued education. And if you look at my profile, I've gotten a lot of education myself, so I really like learning and doing things like that. But the path really led me to, in college, realize that what I was learning, I thought I would major in business. I thought it was time to, not do education, take a more traditional path. But what I loved was all the extracurricular things that I was doing in college, which were creating student experiences for other students, leading alternative spring break trips, just things that were really experiential, but all education based. So that was a good sign for me in my junior year that maybe a traditional business job wasn't going to be as fulfilling as what I was spending a lot of time doing. So I learned then that you can get master's degrees in higher ed administration and make that your career. Before that, I had never thought about how all of the wonderful people I was meeting and that were working with me got their jobs. So when I learned that, it really opened my eyes to, okay, I can study this and really learn how to do it well. So after undergrad, I went and got a master's in higher ed administration and entered my career that way. So I did not start in career services. I started in other functions, and I've covered most traditional higher ed functions at this point: student activities, residence life, academic advising, admissions. And across all of those, the things that I enjoyed the most was talking to students, hearing about them, learning about them, a lot of those extra conversations that you have when you're just around and being part of someone's life. So whether or not I knew it, I was offering career coaching to people and life advice, working with students who were mostly at a different life stage than me without realizing it. So luckily for me, at some point when I was working at Duke at the Fuqua School of Business, I was given the opportunity to transition from admissions over to a career services role with some of the programs that I had been admitting students for. So yes, certainly a little bit accidental in getting the language right of what I am is a career coach and a connector. But I would say deep down, it was just because what I organically enjoy doing is asking people questions about themselves and learning about them.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I'm thinking about your career journey. You were in higher education, traditional higher education, kind of moving a bunch of functions within that space. And then your most recent transition was to keep the function the same, but you shifted into a slightly different industry in, ed tech. So what has it been like to make the pivot out of a really traditional space like higher education into the more, innovative and sexy field of ed tech?
Yeah, it's been a lot of what I expected in terms of pace and being able to make changes faster. I don't think it's a surprise that traditional higher education is not normally fast moving in terms of changing structures. Lots of universities been around for hundreds of years, and sort of have a plan of where they get students and how they flow through. So certainly Edtech, a company really trying to disrupt education and make it more available and accessible. By nature of innovation being the driver, we have to make decisions more quickly. We have to figure out changes and adapt to the market a little bit differently. So that's been really fun for me because that's one of the things that I was craving was more of a chance to explore new ways to do things. But in terms of career coaching, I find it very similar, that this is mid-career people. I was working with a lot of mid-career people in my last job. So sort of that part of what we need, we need more clarity, or we need help with the job search, or we're feeling stuck and we want to know what we should do next. I find that to be very similar across people. And, I was in an international environment before, I'm in another international environment now. So still getting that piece of it. But I would definitely say the scope at which we make sort of company decisions or try to add and innovate is really the big difference.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions coming out of that. One of them is there's, as we probably both know, there's so many educators leaving traditional education and trying to think about how can they move into a space like EdTech. How did you feel about making that transition personally? Like what were the easy parts? What were the difficult parts? What would you tell people who are trying to make that pivot? It's like a terrible triple-barreled coaching question.
Yeah. I think keeping the function the same gave me a lot of confidence. So in terms of from that career coaching perspective, right? How many things am I changing at once? Some industry, function, location, all of that. To me, I felt comfort in knowing that I was keeping the function the same. So I do think that gave me confidence in my ability to change, because I felt really confident that I was doing well in career services and as a career coach, and I still could. I thought I was ready to make a change. So I had confidence going into the interview process and everything. Then I definitely had those moments in between getting the job and starting where I, let every negative thought in my head and questioning my abilities and, critiquing, how do you really think you could do this? And really going back and forth. And as we all tend to do when we make a change, that came from a lot of discussions with a lot of my support network of, I thought you were very confident. You said the interview went great. You're super excited. Yeah, that's right. And do you think you can do the job? Yeah, I do. So why are you, going down this spiral? So, it's always good as a career coach to have some coaching yourself when you get in that position. And another thing I think helped me is spending the last decade working in a business school environment, helping business people transition. I did already feel comfortable with more of the business lingo of, so if I was moving for a company that was talking about KPIs, I knew what those were, not that those were metrics that we used in my job, but I helped prepare students and coach students. So when I've spoken to other educators, if they're in a more traditional function or not in a business environment, I think it's also doing that research about the wording, right? So I know the right verbiage to use. I know the right lingo. I know how to answer questions in the right way. I still did a little bit of that in preparing, but I think the business school environment helped me in that regard.
Yeah, I agree. That's so important. I often share with people like a very embarrassing story of when I started my MBA program. And the very first weekend, there was like a boot camp, for like, they called us dance majors, just people who are like not from business. And somebody used the term R&D. And I had no idea what that meant. And then like, as I kind of moved through that weekend or moved into my MBA program, and I realized like, oh my God, it's such a critical part of a company, research and development. I just felt like such an idiot. Like I don't even know the most basic terms of business. And so I think being able to like grapple with those feelings of like not knowing the language, or the jargon of it, like a lot of it's about learning, but a lot of it's about just building your confidence that you know enough of it.
Yeah. And, I'm not afraid to Google something. If someone mentions something and I don't know what it is, I just quickly Google that so that I can, continue on the discussion without being like, wait, what are you talking about? So, use Google. It's your friend.
Yeah, that happens constantly with clients or in consultations. I find that like the clients that come to Think Development are so diverse. And sometimes they just have this expectation that like we know everything and they'll drop all this jargon. Earlier today, I was talking with somebody about cybersecurity, and then somebody else is in like, manufacturing, and somebody else is in education. It's like those people are dropping really different language and companies and references. Sometimes I'm like Googling, like, let me look that up while you're talking to.
Companies for sure, right? Because it might be the top company in a particular very niche field, but why would I have heard of it? So just quick Google search. Oh yeah, I see your company. Oh wow, that's really great.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask, right? Like people it's great to raise the awareness of the people who are speaking too, that like that's diminishing your own relatability and brand if you're using jargon that's not transferable to other people. Like it makes you more accessible when you can speak in language that everybody understands. So I think generally people appreciate when people ask the clarifying question back.
I agree. So I have always been known to do that, working with very technical people who want to move into a more business function. If they start talking, give an answer, I've always been like, that's a great answer, but here are the 10 words. I did not know what you're talking about. So if you were hoping that I got all of it, I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's big or small, if that's good or bad, if it's hard or easy. And that's usually a light bulb goes off like, okay, could I have used a different word? I'm sure I do it too. So, we all have to keep each other accountable for that.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good segue back to the second question I wanted to ask you from what you shared earlier. One of the things I think is very interesting about your background is you have had experience working with people just across so many different spaces of their career. A little bit early career, mid career, late career, executives, people from all different kinds of countries. And so, how do you think about that experience that you've had, and how does it shape the way that you coach people?
Yeah. The variety is what I love because I feel like I'm learning something new from every stage of person. It definitely helps, know trends of what's cool, right? Definitely younger people. Well, I was probably never cool, but definitely some younger people can tell me the new hip things or ways people communicate and how they want to be, do you use email? Do you use social media? So, and that's true of countries as well, learning the top forms of communication and how you might project yourself differently, sort of an online presence. So there's a lot of learning in it for me, which I like. But I think the other interesting piece is at the core, when someone is using career coaching, I feel like so much of it is the same. We had a path. If it's the first job we got and we're in our first job right out of college or a graduate degree, and we took it because it seemed like a good starting point. If it's, I did something for 10 years and now I want to make a change, or I've been doing something for 25 years and now I'm ready for maybe a more non-traditional career move. I feel like it's all goes back to the clarity of, I thought I knew what I wanted, or I did know for a while, and now I don't anymore. And how do I not feel stuck? And as someone moves through their career, how do I not feel like I made the wrong choice earlier on because now I want to do something different? To me, talking to an external person, talking to a coach is the best way to realize there's no way any of us can predict what our life is going to look like down the line. I mean, if someone would have asked me when I, went to get a master's in higher ed, if I would ever work in a situation that was not traditional higher ed, I'm sure I would have said no. Like, I'm choosing this to get a graduate degree in because this is my field. But Edtech also wasn't really a thing back when I graduated with my master's and started working in the field, right? So there's no way I could know that for myself. There's no way anybody can know that. So that's what I really like, is seeing how at the core, it's all the same, but we have to be able to accept life happens. I learned something new. There's a new field. I'm interested in something else now, or where my career places in importance of life. I have a different life circumstance now. So now what I want out of a job is different. And just being able to help someone on that journey and to realize that all of that is clarity and all of it's fine because our career journeys are just ours, is what I like across all, and see is similar.
How do you help people do that? Like it sounds simple and hard on the surface of like, yeah, it's okay that you made those choices, right? But it's hard when you're in it and you're processing it. There's just a lot of emotions and limiting beliefs that come up, an inner critic, like all that stuff. How do you help somebody work through all that stuff that goes on?
A few years ago now, I read the Designing Your Life book and I became a certified coach in that. And that has really helped me find some wording for some of this, because it takes away, we're just planning out a career and we're planning out our life. And I find when you go to that high of a level, it can help someone think, okay, I do need to piece in some personal things in a transition, and can eliminate some pressures that, maybe a job seems perfect, but it's not, because I don't want to move, and I'm not going to move for personal reasons, right? So now I can think differently, because really what matters is a fulfilled life, and a career is part of it, but not all of it. And so, making sure you don't weigh too much one versus the other, and realize that that changes. So that's given me a lot of language to think about it, and acceptance too. And I've certainly had that in my own life. So the amount of hours I could work changed before I had children, because you got to pick them up and care for them and feed them, and you want to be there for them, right? So then you start looking at your time differently. And then as they grow up, then they need different things. So being able to help somebody see where they are now. And I like, mapping out, even if it's not a set plan A to B, because that typically never works, but thinking through, what's your end goal next? Do you have a clear thing? Which I think goes into clarity, but it's a little more specific than that. Like, if you know for sure what you want, then you can piece back, what do I need to get there? And often we just go to the end goal and don't think about, which is why it seems easy, right? We just set the marker and like, that's what I'm going to do. Do that next year. Okay, right, great. But if you then start to map out what would I need to do, then I think it makes it easier, maybe not in easier in getting it done, but easier in knowing I'm making steps forward.
Yeah, I love that distinction that you make. It's like maybe not necessarily easier in getting it done, but it's hard work, like, and not everybody does it. And so, like, if it wasn't hard, career coaches would not exist, right?
And I do think that's part of the self-reflection, right? Like, I might say I want to change jobs, but if I realize how hard it's going to be, maybe I decide it's not for me right now. Maybe this job is okay, because I really don't want to put in all that work. And that's a good, to me, that's a thought exercise that allows me to be comfortable with my choice to stay in the same place, not I'm just always going to dream that the grass is greener and not put in any effort. So to me, if in working with a student, a client, if what they end up in is the same place, great, because now they are not actually in the same place mentally, even if on paper they look like they're staying in the same job.
I resonate so much with what you're saying. And one of the things that I know is you and I have a lot of similarities, some in background, some in working style. And we kind of wear this hat between career coach and strategist. And think development, we care a lot about helping clients find the right match for a coach. You and I have so many similarities, and we coach to the same program. How do you think that we're different beyond being like different human beings?
I think we've had different experiences. I think we're probably both, like you said, on that strategy piece in terms of giving the real feedback when someone needs the harsh feedback. I was gonna say maybe you're nicer than me in giving it, but I don't know what that says about me. But I think you have a much more calming presence, I believe, than I feel I convey. So I think that's more of a personality thing of maybe I'm a little feistier on the outset. So it's a slight difference, but in terms of personality, which I think is part of it too, right? There are just personality types that we believe are going to give us what we need. And, that's great. That's why there are so many different personalities. And certainly I think we have a lot of differences across coaches, and that's perfect. So those are what I come up with. I'm curious if you have something else that you were thinking of.
That's so funny. No, I love that. And I love pulling out those like tiny nuances, because there's so many coaches, and it could be that, if you look at the website and we both have transition on there, and you look at our background, it's like, oh, well, I see a lot of similarity here. And even the way that we coach, like the preference for strategy and, tough love, as somebody said to me this morning, I'm looking for somebody to give me tough love. And I was like, ooh, Lisa would be good for that. But there is like even small personality differences of like, oh, I might really want to work with somebody who has a really dry sense of humor, and maybe I'm quirkier than you are, or maybe I am much more introverted and reserved, even on the surface, than you are. It's like those small differences do matter in finding the right fit for the client, I think.
And I mean, I think one of the things that I appreciate about all of us at Think Development is I think we are all very self-aware of who we are as people and how we come across. So to me, that's a service that we are providing to clients. Like, we would also notice if a personality match is not likely to be there. And we are happy to make suggestions to someone else amongst the group that we think would fit better in terms of, who likes to email all at one time of day, or who wants you to reach out and be proactive, or those little personality quirks, like you said. That's what I love about all of the coaches we have, is we're like, this is who I am. I've honed it over time, and I don't believe it should be for everyone, right? It's for some people, it's not for everyone. And we're just happy that they get the help that they need.
Yeah. And to answer your question, two things that strike me about our differences. One I asked you about just a moment ago is like, I think you've had a really great diverse experience of working with so many people globally. And now you're working with students who are in Africa. A lot of the students at Fuqua you worked with were from Asia. And so I think when you have that global lens and you've learned a lot about different cultures and preferences, it gives you a lot of empathy in how you're working with people. And I don't think I necessarily bring that to the table. I think that's really special. That's one. And then I remember a conversation we had very early on when you were coming into Think Development. We were reviewing a resume together, and he said, "How would you approach this with a client?" And the first question you asked was, you kind of like set the resume aside, and you said, like, what were you most proud of on your resume? Tell me about that. And I was just like, oh, like, what a powerful question. That's not how I would approach it. I almost automatically jump into the strategy and start dissecting things. And you went deeper to, like, really zoom into the person and hear what they cared about. And I think that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that conversation too.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a long time ago. We have.
It was, you're right.
Another thing I wanted to ask you, and we were chatting about this a little bit earlier today, is as coaches, we're always learning and growing and developing. I think that's what leads coaches into the field, is they want that continual growth. Tell me about something you're learning right now or incorporating into your coaching that's, I don't know, you're thinking about, it's impacting the way that you think about things or work with clients.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I know we brought it up a bit earlier, but I have just now embarked on a journey of getting more training on positive intelligence. And it fits a lot of the things that I am interested in, right? It has neuroscience behind it, so it fits that learner part, and it fits learning where everyone comes from, right? So sort of that empathy piece and learning. But it's been very good for me because mindfulness has always been something I have wished I was good at. And have never really taken the time to force myself to do it, right? So I definitely fall in that camp of who has time to sit and reflect. And, I'm remembering my grocery list and my schedule for the day. How do I shut off my brain? So full disclosure, came in with all of the skepticism of anyone who's wondering about it. And on my own personal journey, I have already, in a very short time, really seen the value of waking up in the morning, not checking my phone, not checking what I missed last night, right? But setting an intention for the day, and then looking at my calendar, and anytime I have a lot of big meetings, taking a pause just to reflect and focus on breathing for a couple of minutes, or listen to sounds and different things. And it really does clear your mind. And a lot of the positive intelligence training is reminding us that we are not going to be perfect at it. So, you're going to fail, and one day you're not going to do it at all. And sort of my achiever nature needs to hear those reminders and realize that it's a journey. But I've found too that that's what people need when they come to coaching, is you need that person to say, look, just take a pause. You said it earlier, but like, job searching, career stuff is hard. It's hard, and it can really beat you down, right? When you're in the thick of it. But being able to take that time and say, I'm going to sit back and relax, and I'm going to just focus on breathing and not sort of let go of all the other worries, that can really be much more rejuvenating than I was expecting. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting better at it myself, and then encouraging more people to do it in whatever way works for them, because I do think we all need, lives are so busy. We could be constantly on 24/7 with our devices. You are also very good at setting boundaries of your devices and things. So that's something I have learned from you, but really, really doing that and getting other people to realize we can all take a pause, we can check out, and actually how that helps us in our job search and in our career journey. That's, we're not missing an opportunity by not responding, or by, not checking something all the time. And I've realized too, I've gone into meetings feeling much more relaxed just by like the 2 minutes beforehand, not responding to an email, just by taking a moment to focus.
Yeah, I love that. And you were telling me a little bit about this earlier, and how there's like a cohort of people who are doing it together. I think sometimes you just watch people do it, and it seems like they're gonna do it without a hitch, right? Like, they're doing it because it's easier for them, but it's going to be harder for me. But you mentioned there's like a whole cohort of people who are bringing to the table, like, yeah, I'm doing it, but like I'm struggling, or here's where it's hard, here's where I'm getting stuck. And I think um, that's really neat too. How do you think that's shaped the experience of trying to do it, but also hearing the reality of how others are doing it?
Yeah, no, first, I think you see how a lot of people are coming to it with, I'm not sure this is going to work for me. I'm not sure I'm that type of person, right? So to know, again, with anything, I'm not the only one who's questioning it a little bit, right? So that's comforting. But to see someone say, today I did this really well, and then, you know what, but I also didn't do this, and I got super critical, or, just being real, like, I had this intention that I was going to get this accomplished today, and you know what, I didn't do it. And, that's been really nice, because anything that I have thought of myself, someone else has gone through it as well. And then you see the vulnerability, you see what happens when someone says, I didn't meet my goal for today, I didn't spend as much time on this. And someone else saying, you know what, that's okay. And half the time that's okay. And neither did I. Right. So let's all do better tomorrow. Right. So it really is that encouragement of, we're not saying I didn't meet it today, so I'm not doing it anymore. It's really a group to say, you know what, we're not going to be perfect, so let's just keep on trying. And that's really what I need, right? Because I do like to have a plan. I do like to set goals. I do like to check things off a to-do list. So seeing how I can fit this in to sort of that part of my brain and my personality, and realize maybe I don't need this to be as structured as that, but what I need is to promise myself that I'm going to try every day, and whatever I do is an accomplishment, which is good for me, because it's sort of realizing I can set goals differently and have them be a little more nebulous, and not have the end goal so much in mind. Like, if I do it, I'm giving myself like a pat on the back that I did something, and it lets me flow through the day.
I love that. I can't wait to hear more about your experience. And Itir, who's another coach at Think Development, she's also trained in positive intelligence. I feel like we're gonna have to make it our next monthly coaching topic to talk about together.
I feel like she's much more further down the path than me. She appears mindful always. So, so I'm aspiring to be more like that.
That's true. That's true. Cool. Well, this is so helpful. So many different topics that we covered. I could ask you questions all day long, but I am looking at the time. So I want to end with the question I like to ask everybody at the end of this. I care so much about connecting with others in your career. I think is so powerful. Who are you interested in connecting with in the year to come?
That's a good question. I feel like there are so many people, but sort of staying on this same path. I am really interested in connecting with people who are further along in, in sort of exploring how these, sort of neuroscience, mindfulness type things fit into their coaching, especially people who I would say, call themselves more of a career coach, right? Because I do think there are a lot of these nuanced differences, and I see a lot of ways for them to cross over together, but I don't necessarily see that many people doing that in a very intentional way. So people who've been able to bridge all of these different ideas together and see how it helps their work is really what I'm interested in. So maybe people who've been willing to take that leap and become entrepreneurs. I'm always interested in learning the story behind that story of, making the leap. So I would say those are the two buckets of people that I'm most interested in chatting with.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm sure we'll have more conversations like this in the future.
Thanks. It was fun.